Today's episode is brought to you by Don't Be a Gunsel, more affectionately known as the D-Bags. Mr. Josh Williams has partnered with us on this and has become our main sponsor of the show. And a little bit about Don't Be a Gunsel. This is just right from their description on their page. We are farm, ranch, and rodeo folks who are tired of posers, fakes, and wannabes. So we carved out our own brand with a simple message: don't be a gunsel. You can find them on Facebook and Instagram, Don't Be a Gunsel, and don'tbeagunsel.com. They've got some hats and some stickers, and then they always share some of the best memes I've seen. So go check them out. Buy some of their merch. If you do, use the promo code BURNINDAYLIGHT and get yourself 10% off. That's BURNINDAYLIGHT. Get yourself 10% off. Get yourself some cool shit. Help a brother out. And so thanks to Don't Be a Gunsel. Go check them out.
Howdy there. I'm Matt McKinley, and we're burning daylight. Howdy there, daylight burners. Happy National Day of the Cowboy. Right now, as we speak, there's about 30,000 or so estimated people, which is one valley over in Yerington, Nevada, for Night in the Country. It's a big music festival in a big dirt field, I believe. I haven't went to it. Too many people at one time for my liking, especially in the heat of the day. It's actually cooled down pretty good compared to the rest of the week. So it's not bad right now. Rode Karma this morning. She's a little fired up, wanting to move. So we're gonna let her move. So on my National Day of the Cowboy, I'm taking a younger horse, green horse. We are headed out to the desert, and I'm about to catch a long trot. And I'm gonna tell you a couple cowboy stories just to celebrate. You won't see this till Monday, but it is National Day of the Cowboy, goddammit, and I'm celebrating, so come along for the ride. Well, folks, here we are, headed out across the desert of western Nevada, and I am on a big leggy, stocky sorrel mare. A little bit of an attitude issue. Nothing terrible, nothing that we can't fix with some miles and some wet saddle blankets, but here we are. So I found me a little road. We're just down the way from an RV resort, and like I said, we're bordered on two sides by BLM ground and quite a little bit of it. So for whatever reason, these folks come down to this RV resort, and they bring these great big toy haulers and haul some the Rangers and Razors and four-wheelers and dirt bikes and even a few dune buggies here and there. And they come, well, ideally they're supposed to come out here to ride out in the desert, catch a trail, and go pitter-pattering on up in the hills and go see some sights. But it seems like all they really do is drive down the fucking county road and tear it all to shit. But that's a story for another day. We're cowboying today. And so anyway, I found me a little road from one of these four-wheelers, and we caught us a long trot, and we're gonna go cover some ground, get a little sweat going on old Karma, and it seemed like a very fitting way to celebrate this National Day of the Cowboy. I actually didn't know it was until I saw it on Twitter this morning, and I can never keep up with these national days of yo-yos or National Day of ball joints, or what's the other one, like National Day of peanut butter and jelly or some shit like that. But I think this one's kind of cool just because it's what I do. It's what I like to talk about ad nauseum, as you may have noticed. So, yeah, this seemed like a good celebration. I'm gonna go drain some pounds off the old mare, just shed a couple lbs, and then once I get back, I'll enjoy me a cold Coors Light or something along the lines, and yeah, just reminisce about reminisce. That's how I'm gonna say it from now on. Reminisce about our ancestors and the folks that kind of paved the way for us, and yeah, just kind of thank God I'm lucky enough to do a job that I love, and also I get to share about it to hundreds of people, soon to be thousands, maybe millions. I'm not going to count my chickens before the eggs hatch, but yeah, I think we could get there. So anyway, I wanted to tell you a couple funny stories, well, they're all real stories as far as I know. There's one I'm about to tell you is a second-hand story, but it was told to me by my good buddy George, the Greek cowboy, back in college. And he was a tall teller, but I wouldn't call him a liar. Most cowboys are kind of tall tellers. You know, there's some truth to every story you hear from them usually, but it might be slightly exaggerated. They might participate in just a skosh of hyperbole, but there's always some truth behind it. So my buddy George, he was from northwest Colorado, up in Moffat County, and there's quite a thriving Greek community up there, kind of like the Bascos out here in Nevada, and the Mennonites back home. So there's just those little pockets of kind of different ethnicities there, and I swear to God, I haven't been drinking. I just can't find my tongue today. Ethnicities. So there's a pretty thriving Greek community, and the Greeks are a lot like the Bascos, who are a lot like the Mexican fellows, who are a lot like the Irish fellows, or just really kind of just about any people on earth when you really boil it down. They like to sit around, they like to tell stories, and they like to drink and have a good time. And that's probably why I got along with them so well. But these just happen to be Greek cowboys, and sure enough, cowhands. And they owned still do, I believe, own a lot of land, and they had, last I knew, they had one of the top registered Angus herds in the country. They're one of the bigger bull producers in the country, and they do a lot of high altitude type bulls. So what happens is sometimes those old cattle, they can't handle the high altitude. You know, when you're working up around the Great Divide, or on the way up to the Great Divide and all these high mountain pastures, what they do is their heart can't handle it, and they start collecting fluid down on their brisket. Kind of swells up, and then it's eventually it ends up with it's called brisket disease for short, but it's congestive heart failure, and that heart will get enlarged and it'll start carrying fluid around it, and eventually it doesn't really burst, but it just kind of gives out. And you can tell when you cut them open, a cow heart looks a lot like a human heart, which looks nothing like the heart that you draw. It's a heart looks more like an almond, just a big veiny almond, more than it does a heart that you draw. And there's it's rounded on top, and it comes to a point on the bottom. And with this brisket disease or congestive heart failure, what you get is the heart is almost round, and it's kind of shaped like a beach ball or a basketball, and roughly about the same size. And when you cut them open so you can break those ribs back and see the lungs and the heart there, you'll immediately begin draining gallons of fluid off that brisket, and so you can tell pretty quick when it's brisket disease or heart failure, as we call it here. And we've had quite a bit of issue. I wouldn't say quite a bit of issue, but an increased issue with dairy cattle, in particular the steers, getting this heart failure. But it makes sense when you think about it. All these dairies they come from are right around sea level. They're only 3 or 4 hours away from us. Some of them may be a little bit further, but they're all over the hill and on the downslope of the Sierras. So they kind of sit down in those valleys, and the valleys here in Nevada are quite a bit higher than the valleys there in California. Being further west you go, the closer you are to the Pacific Ocean. So they come from those little valleys and whatnot there in California, and they're right around sea level, and then they come up here, and we're just shy of 5,000 feet in the valley. We're just shy of 6 at the top of the pass leaving the valley, headed north, and so we'd get some of those steers with brisket disease, and well, that was not at all what I began to talk about. But anyway, George's family, they raise a lot of high altitude bulls, and they sell quite a few of them. So anyway, like I said before, sure enough, cowhands just happen to be very, very Greek, and drink ouzo and eat lamb, and and they call their grandma Yaya, and yeah, it's just they're very culturally Greek as well as American, and they were branding cattle up that way one year, I guess, and George was telling me the pasture where they are branding at, where they had their trap, was just down the road from a little kind of roadside bar. There wasn't anything else out there except that bar, and one of their neighbors, he was a pretty handy old fella. He was helping them brand, because that's what you do, you help your neighbors. And George said after they got done, they always went down to that bar, and they kind of got loose, because they always branded there towards the end of their branding season. So if it wasn't the last branding of the year, it was pretty close. It was usually like their last big branding, if I remember right. And so they'd brand cattle all day, and of course the way most brandings are, well, not most, but a lot of brandings, people will drink beer pretty much the whole time. You try not to. I try not to do it till the end, because I'm not a good enough roper as it is. I'm definitely not a very good roper when I've been drinking a little, so I always wait till the end, and that way I've got my wits about me, and I can go to work and get a job done to the best of my abilities, which are very slim. And but anyway, they branded, had a few beers along the way, and then they all loaded up and went to that little roadside bar. Well, this family friend, I forget what he said his name was, but we'll just call him Jim for now. Old Jim's house was basically right on the edge of that property where they were branding, so he just rode his horse over. He saddled up there at his barn and just met him over across the fence, and helped him gather, brand, and then since he had rode over there, he just rode his horse on down to the bar. They had a hitching post and shit out there, and he left him in a trailer, whatever, probably out of the sun, and so he went and had his barley pops, and made from the barley of High Mountain barley by the great Coors Company, and they actually grow quite a little bit of high altitude barley around that area just for the Coors Company to brew. And he had his few barley pops, and he got done, and he was relatively tuned up, but nothing out of control. And he he goes and grabs his pony, and he's being the old cowhand he is. Ain't nothing for him to ride the 3 or 4 miles back to his house along the county road. And so that's what he was attempting to do. And I guess he got about a mile and a half down the road. And sure enough, when you know, he got pulled over by state patrol or county sheriff, something along those lines. And he thought he thought he must have been way drunker than he originally thought, because he thought he was seeing things. So anyway, he shut her down, and which, unlike a vehicle, you don't have to put on a blinker and get slowing down. No, he was just, from what I understood, he was just walking in the ditch there with just at a walk, just plugging along on this old dun horse that he had. And a cop rolls up to him, and must have been a real slow day, apparently. And he says, "Sir, you been drinking?" He said, "Well, yes, sir, I have." And he said, "You got your driver's license?" And he said, "Well, no, I don't, actually. I left at the house because I didn't drive today. I rode my horse to work, and then I rode him to the bar, and now I'm riding him home." And he said, "Well, you cannot be operating a piece of equipment under the influence of alcohol in the state of Colorado." And he said, "Well, I agree with you. It's a good thing I'm not. I'm riding a horse." And he said, "Well, sir, I'm going to have to give you a ticket. I'm going to have to give you a DUI. If I don't know. I don't recall if he had to take a breathalyzer or do a roadside sobriety or whatever. But you know, he was on a horse in the ditch, doing everything you'd expect him to do, aside from, I guess he should have just found a gate, went in there, and then been on private property, and it wouldn't have been a big deal. But anyhow, seems like a little bit of overkill from that old cop. But the old boy really thought maybe he was seeing things. He said, "You're giving me a DUI?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, on what grounds?" And he said, "Well, you weren't walking in a straight line on that horse." And he goes, "Dunny, you've been swerving on me. God damn it, I trust you to get me home safe, and now I'm going to jail." And I guess he fought it, of course, took it to court and got it thrown out. But man, you talk about having a bad day. That'll highway patrolman or undersheriff or whatever the hell he was, he must have been having a real bad day, if he or a real slow day, or just maybe he thought he was really, really super cop. He's just a super trooper, and thought he was gonna get some punk for littering and it's, you know, mind you, this is Colorado. It's not like Nevada. If it was Nevada, that old boy probably would have got himself a 12-pack to go and just proceeded to keep drinking on the way home. I don't know the guy, but from what it sounded like, he liked to consume a few libations. And but anyhow, he ended up having to go to court to get a DUI while horseback thrown out, and I'm glad he did. I hope that old cop got fired too, because that was about the biggest bunch of horseshit I've ever heard of. Pun intended. One of my better cowboy wreck stories involves myself at a young age. I was still in elementary school, and I know that because the day this happened, I just so happened to have a baseball game, Little League Baseball, in the town of Kim, Colorado. And Kim is a really pretty little town. Kim is kind of a gateway to the Kim and Pritchett and Branson. They're kind of the gateways to the canyon country of southeast Colorado and northeast New Mexico and the western part of the Oklahoma Panhandle. And my dad's good buddy, his name's Charlie Hafner. He used to own this ranch. It was off of Road M and County Road M and County Road, I think 8, somewhere around there. So it was 8 miles from the Oklahoma border, and then about 8 miles from the Los Animas County line. The way the roads are numbered out there in Baca County. Most of the counties in eastern Colorado, everything's real flat, so everything's on a grid, and they just kind of go every mile is a road. And the way it's set up in Baca County, your alphabet lettered roads are running east and west, and your numbered roads are running north and south. So Road M runs east and west, and it is so County Road A would be the Oklahoma line, and so it'd been whatever that is. That it's like 10. I guess that'd be 10 miles north of the Oklahoma border. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, 13 miles. 13 miles north of the Oklahoma border. Be Road M. And then I believe it's on Road 8. And so that'd be 8 miles east of the Los Animas County line. Los Animas County being the next county over. And we went over to help Charlie move some pears off the canyon top there, the mesa, and push them on down to the home place, which set down in the canyon. He was moving them off a government pasture back to private ground. And so it was me and my dad and Charlie, and we went out across there, and we were pushing these cows up. And I wouldn't say I was much of a hand on a horse, but I could kind of push cows a little bit. And of course I was riding this old horse named Fat Man, who was just a real son of a bitch. I hated that horse. There really wasn't anything wrong with him, but he was a big old fat swayback horse. He had belonged to my dad's buddy Eddie Knott, and they had traded each other for something or other. I don't know. They're always trading. You know how cowboys are. They're gonna buy, sell, and trade just about anything under the sun, and it may involve like trading a rooster or something for a pair of spurs, or something obscure like that. Two things that really don't go together, but you get enough old cowhands together, they'll make a trade guaranteed. And so he'd acquired this old. He was kind of a big and stocky, ain't the way to put it. He was fat, big fat bay swayback horse, and that old bastard. I was holding him. I got him saddled, and I was holding him. We were getting ready to mount up and head out on one of my dad's trail rides, and this old bastard steps on my foot. And usually that happens. It happens, I wouldn't say regularly. If it happens regularly, you need to figure out where the hell you're standing. But old Fat Man had a knack of just finding your foot. And then you could almost see him grin as you're hopping on your other foot, trying to get him pushed off, and he just kind of grinds into your toe. Real slow, methodical, about 2 good twists, and then he'll finally kind of blow his wind out and take a half step over so you can get your foot out from underneath him. And how my foot didn't get just mangled all to shit, I'll never know. And maybe it's just because I was a puss and I thought he was really just grinding it to me, but in all reality he was just kind of standing there. But that doesn't make for a good story, so shut up. This sucker was just trying to snap my toes off. And anyway, I was on old Fat Man that day down in that place now is called the Ford Ranch. Old Charlie sold out because his wife couldn't stand it, because it was kind of out in the boonies. It was good. It was about 30 minutes to Kim, so that'd make it. And if you went to Pritchett instead, that was about 45 minutes, I believe. I guess about 30 minutes either way. It was kind of the way it was positioned. And, well, Pritchett's little, tiny, maybe a little bit bigger than Kim, but not by much. They neither one of them have much. They both kind of got a general store. And, I don't think Pritchett has a fuel station at all. I think the Kim outpost does. And then other than that, they got like a school and a post office, and that's pretty well lit. Kim has a big rodeo arena. They do a WRCA sanctioned ranch rodeo every year, Working Ranch Cowboys Association. And that happened to be where I was playing ball that day. I had to have been 5th or 6th grade, and I was a pretty good little baseball player at the time. I played first base. I was in the all-star team, and I usually started as an all-star. And so my dad was going to take me over to help move cows, and then he was going to take me over to the baseball game. And so we're pushing these cows down off the mesa, and they got to go down this real narrow, kind of steep sandstone trail down across a little creek, and sometimes it's running, sometimes it's not. This time it happened to be running just a little bit, but it was only 5-6 inches deep. It wasn't a lot of water moving, but when you're crossing cattle over a creek, you gotta wait there for a minute and let them find their path, and then they'll bail on in, and some of them will balk and whatever. And we got them all across that creek with no issue at all. But as soon as we, all three of us, crossed that creek on horseback, one of them calves broke loose, and he started heading down the creek bed away from where we were headed to. The house was headed back to the north, and that old calf was headed south at a pretty high rate of speed along that creek bed. And eventually, if he would have followed the creek all the way, he would end up going back east. But just the way the creek was running right there at that particular point, he was headed south, and then when that creek headed back to the east, the fence line kept on going south. So he, in theory, would have stayed along that. But so we went tearing after him, and my dad had a loop shook out, and Charlie went ahead and kept pushing the rest of the herd back up towards the home place, and he told me to go help my dad get the rope off that calf. When we got him, I had a rope, but I was probably maybe a little bit better then than I am now of a roper, and that ain't saying much on either one. But my dad took off, and he had a rope out, and Charlie was just gonna come back with the trailer, and we were gonna load him up and haul him back over and dump him with the cows and let him pair back up. And so we go charging through this creek bottom. My dad he fades out to the west, and kind of gets on the other side of all the brush and trees that are down there on that creek bottom, and he's got a pretty good beat on this calf, and he's gonna try to rate alongside with him until that calf pops up out of the creek bottom when it jogs back to the east, and then slap a loop on him. Well, I tried to follow him, but old fat man, to no avail. I'm a little 70-80 pound kid, and he is just having his way, no matter what. I'm sawing on his mouth, and I can't get him to turn. He's just happy to be running, and just kind of happy to be an asshole. So I'm trying to duck branches and limbs as we go crashing through there, and a lot of these trees are old locust or like Russian olive trees, and they got these great big old thorns. And well, wouldn't you know it, I got hooked. And I didn't get hooked where you'd expect, like my arms or my chest or something. Nope. my left earlobe got impaled by one of them great big locust thorns, and it ended up ripping the base of my earlobe away from my neck about 1/8 of an inch up, and from the bottom up about 1/8 of an inch was all ripped away from my head, and I squalled like a stuck pig, but that thorn finally kind of popped loose, and never felt a better sense of relief in my life. Well, it was very short-lived, because just directly after that, my head was turned back toward my horse's ass because I was connected to a tree. So I finally popped loose, and I looked forward just in time to see another great big cottonwood
Well, we
branch
made it,
come
as you can
right
see.
across my chest, and I looked
I
like
flew through an angry den of
I looked like one of them little cartoon characters.
flying
I
ants.
had my feet
So,
and arms straight out in front
I'm
of
gonna
me,
get the
and
hell
I
out of
looked
here.
back and kept on
On that
charging
note,
through, and I just stayed
I'm
right
gonna call it a
there,
day. So
and
go do
it's
your
dang
thing.
hard, I didn't have a
Find me on
chance to
Facebook, Matt
grab
McKinley,
that
Instagram,
branch
Twitter, at
maybe let myself
MakerMac85.
down. No, it knocked me plumb
Follow the show
plumb
page,
free of
Burning
the saddle.
Daylight,
I
on
didn't grab
Facebook,
onto
at
shit,
Burning Daylight on
and I landed
Instagram,
right on my tailbone,
at
and,
Burning Daylight 2 on Twitter.
kind of somersaulted over backwards and ended
Search
up
Burning Daylight on
halfway
YouTube.
standing.
You can
Was
listen
not
to it and
intentional,
watch
I
the
guess
video
look
podcast
for
there. We've got a couple other
disgraceful-
extra videos.
Or ungraceful.
And
dismount. It was
patreon.com
about
/Burning
graceful.
Daylight.
Yes.
We'll have some bonus
And,
content up there
but
that I will
I
be behind
I
a
reached up and grabbed my ear,
paywall here
and rub on
very
it a little
soon.
bit, and I pulled
But
my hand back, and it is just covered
I'm going
in
to try
blood.
not to get
Right,
eaten up
red, sticky
by these
blood.
goddamn flying ants. So I'm
Well,
out.
by this time, my dad
And,
got Kev
on
drove,
that note,
and he's got
move
him
your
tied
ass
down,
from
and then he
Burning
went and
Daylight.
gathered up my horse, and I come plodding through the creek bottom there to that little clearing. I come up out of the creek bottom, and I go retrieve the reins from my dad and go step back on, and I'm trying not to cry, even though I'm a tough guy, all of 11 years old or so, and I'm trying to be a tough guy, but I'm more than anything, I'm just really trying not to cry, and so we head up back to the house where Charlie was pretty good barbecue artist. He could really run a smoker, and he's got some brisket and stuff laid out there for us. Great big old spread. There were just 3 of us, but he had it all laid out there in front of us, and I went into the house and tried to wash as much blood off my neck as I could, but it was caked on there pretty good, and so without taking a shower, probably wasn't going to get it done. And so I scraped what I could off, and the rest of it I just left. And so we ate a quick bite of lunch, and then we headed into Kim for a baseball game. And then I got made fun of the whole game for having a bunch of blood on my neck and my ear. I mean, it was still caked up in my eardrum, and and all down my neck. I mean, a typical head wound. It going to bleed pretty severely. There wasn't really anything wrong, but it was bleeding like a sieve. And that was another time that almost ruined me from cowboying for the rest of my life. But thanks to my folks, I didn't have much of a choice in the matter. They just said, "Nah, I don't care if you want to or not. You're going to go do some cowboy shit today." That's not what they said, but that's the basic gist of it. And anyway, I'm glad they did. I guess the final story for this National Day of the Cowboy, as I'm sure you've noticed by a lot of the songs that I play, especially the ones that I picked by myself. There's everybody that has recommended something I've really enjoyed. You guys kind of figured out my style of music, and you got me pretty well pegged. And so, I think it was Kanye Boswell that recommended Matt Robertson. I'm really digging his stuff. He's got this song called Dakalina. I think I'm gonna put it for the featured song today. So if you're listening on YouTube, you won't hear that. But if you listen to the audio only, or if you go watch the video podcast on on Podbean or Apple, or I think Spotify does video too. I don't know on that really well. I've never been a video podcast guy, mostly because I don't have time to sit down and watch it. I always listen to them as I'm working or driving or whatever. So I guess I'm a product of the talk radio days. Conservative talk radio is kind of where I was before I got into the podcast. All sorts of obsessed with them. So I'm not real sure on the video ones, but I know that you can play them on Apple. I know you can play them on Podbean, and I believe you can play them on Spotify as well. But if you want to hear the music, you're gonna have to you're either gonna have to listen to them on. I guess I don't have music on any of the video stuff. So if you want the music, you're gonna have to listen to the first 30 seconds or so of every audio episode, and then I put the whole song at the tail end. And I'm not real sure on the legality of it yet, but nobody's told me to stop it. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep doing it until I'm told otherwise. But I really like that Matt Robertson fella, and I like just good cowboy music in general. I used to say I was a country music guy, but I wouldn't even say that anymore. I like cowboy music, and I like a lot of I guess you'd call it's either Texas country or red dirt country or Americana, whatever they want to label it now, but it's a lot of just underground, independent type country music. And so that being said, most of them are from like Texas, Oklahoma. There's a few others from like Wyoming and Idaho and Nevada, and and then you got, like, you probably noticed, I do like me some Corb Lund. He's a Canadian fella, and but I like that style of songwriting. I like any song with a good backstory to it and a way of telling it. And Corb Lund kind of nails that old cowboy storytelling type genre. And then most of your Oklahoma bands that I listen to, they've got that old Woody Guthrie folk music influence, and so they know how to spin a tale, spin a yarn, as they say. They really know how to tell that story and keep you interested, and that just doesn't hurt that they're pretty badass musicians as well. But I want to give a shout out to Miss Calamity Cass. I don't know what her last name is, but her Instagram handle is like calamity.cass, and she's a buckaroo type gal and a leather worker, and I believe she's punching up in Montana with her boyfriend or husband or man friend, whatever he is. But she messaged me here a while back, and she sent me a couple podcasts to listen to, and it's called Cowboy Crossroads with Andy Hedges. And Andy Hedges is a cowboy poetry guy, and he recorded a whole bunch of interviews up in Elko for the National Cowboy Poetry Gathering that they have every I think it's every February. And and she forwarded me a couple episodes that were with Ramblin' Jack Elliott. So speaking of Woody Guthrie, this old fella Ramblin' Jack was born in the 30s in Brooklyn, New York. He was a city kid, and he ran away from home at the age of 14 or 15 and joined a rodeo. And then he kind of fell in with, he learned how to play guitar and play some cowboy songs, and he learned how to do that, and just kind of become a cowboy. At a city kid from Brooklyn, ran away from home, joined a rodeo, and just learned how to cowboy. And now he's 80-something years old, and you talk about a character and a storytelling fool. Holy cow, I felt like a little kid in the 1930s just sitting in front of the radio listening to Story Hour, listening to that old fella just drone on about his life experiences. And old Cass told me I need to get him on the show, so that is a goal. I don't know how feasible it's going to be, but I'll try. Because he'd be a good one for sure. I know. I listened to it, and I made my wife listen to it, and she got a kick out of it. And he's pretty cool. So I recommend you go check that out. It's called Cowboy Crossroads, and Andy Hedges is the host. And every episode he starts with a cowboy poem from different people that he reads. And if you never heard cowboy poetry, I think you'll really like it. I'm thinking about doing a little research into it and maybe trying to write a few on my own. Whether that'll be successful or not, I don't know. I can tell a story, and I can usually keep people interested. I don't know if I can get the cadence and the rhythm and the rhymes to make it a cowboy poem. But I think I'm gonna give it a go and see how it turns out. And but I guess it'd be my dad and some of his buddies that kind of more I just kind of learned that stuff through osmosis. That's kind of some stuff that my dad's into and his friends are into, and so therefore now I'm kind of into it. And I was thinking, I was telling my wife yesterday, we went up to Walker, California. They got this little burger joint called Walker Burger that we'd been wanting to try for a while. Everybody says it's really good, and it is. So we went up there and had supper, and I made her listen to Ramblin' Jack Elliott on the way up there, and on the way back we listened to both episodes. And I was telling her how my buddies in college, especially Aaron, would always give me hell because when I'd tell a story, I'd usually tell about 4 or 5 stories before I eventually get back to the main point. But it's just kind of how I grew up listening to stories. And I was talking with my horseshoer here the other day, and he was shoeing horses for some kind of wealthy folks, and they had him over for Brandon, and he brought some of his buddies, and they got done branding, and they sat around drinking beer and talking, and one of the owners, he was drinking a couple glasses of wine because he's kind of high society type, and he had about 2 or 3 glasses of wine, and then he said, "Man, I'm going to bed." And he said, "I don't know how you guys do this. You guys just stay up and talk and drink beer all night." And me and Justin, my farrier, were kind of talking about it, and I said, "Well, yeah, that's I've always told people, because when my city buddies from college, when they'd come down to Tobacco County and visit, I said, well, don't expect the bullshitting to stop anytime soon, because once you crack open the beers and you get to talking, it's going to be a while, and that's just kind of how we do it. And I think a lot of the reason behind that is for most of your work week or work month, you don't see hardly anybody. You're out there by yourself, just you and your horse, and you're just babbling on to a creature that really don't want you on his back. And so when you finally get back to civilization and you see some real people, you're pretty willing to talk a little bit, and it always makes for a good time. And I guess that's kind of where I developed my ability to tell a story, was kind of modeled off of my dad and his buddies, and I think that just goes it goes way back to that old cowboy way of life. Just you're out by yourself all the time. You're real self-sufficient, and when you do make it to town, you like to let your hair down, kick your heels up, and have a good time. And sometimes you have a little bit too much fun, which is never really a good thing. I mean, I guess if nobody gets hurt, it's all right. But you gotta play it cool a little bit. But when you get a bunch of cowboys or buckaroos in the same place at the same time, it's bound to get a little rowdy, and you're gonna hear some hellacious stories. And it seems like all of us, the way we do it, it takes a little bit to get to the point, and you got to get a little animation. You got to get a little sidetracked. You got to get off on one point so it builds on your original point. So then, by the time you get back to the very beginning story that you were trying to tell in the first place, it really drives the point home. And whether that be a punchline or the moral of the story or whatever it is, by the time you get there, it really makes it good. And that's why, a lot of times, even though they'd give me hell about taking forever to get to the point, but by the time I did, they were usually almost in tears laughing, and that's not to toot my own horn, but it's just kind of how I learned, and so that's kind of how we tell stories, and if you listen to Ramblin' Jack, you'll understand. And then also my good friend Billy Whitfield. He's been a friend of my dad's for a long time. He's an old family friend of ours. I've told you about him. He used to play lead guitar for Roger Miller way back in the day when Roger Miller was still the king of the road. And he's kind of an old cowboy like that too. A hellacious guitar player, plays banjo, fiddle, guitar. I think he plays piano a little bit. And from what I understand, he doesn't read a lick of music. He just kind of plays it by ear. But man, is he good at it. And he tells a story a lot like that. Kind of meanders around, gets back to the point eventually. And then some of those guys have a way of telling a punchline that you almost don't even know it's a punchline until he's already moved on to the next story. And so your laughter is delayed a couple seconds because you didn't realize it ended, and he was already on to the next one. And it doesn't make the punchline any less funny. They just don't really accentuate it. And so I don't really quite go that way. I do a lot of meandering, as you know, but it's just fun watching and listening different people tell stories, and it's one of the best things, truly the best things about being in this kind of cowboy ranching buckaroo type world, because you'll hear some of the best stories you ever hear in your life, and hopefully I can get some more folks on to tell their stories, and I think you'll really enjoy it. But that being said, like I said, you've all kind of pegged me for what kind of music I'm gonna enjoy, and you've been right pretty well every time. From Ian Munsick to Matt Robertson and Dave Stamey, they're either kind of newer, new school kind of country music with just grounded in some old cowboy roots, or just straight up cowboy storytelling songs, and I love it all. If it's got a good story and it's got a good beat, I'll listen to it, and I appreciate all of you. So like I said, I'm gonna play that Docalina song by Matt Robertson. I think you'll really like it. It's kind of a story about a old cowhand having to choose between his best horse and a girl that was sure awful pretty, but he is going to have to sell that horse to buy her a ring. And as you probably guessed, that old cowpuncher, he didn't sell his horse. So anyhow, I hope you enjoyed these stories today. Happy National Day of the Cowboy, and I'm just about back to the feedlot. I'm gonna go yank the saddle off this old nag, and and call her a day.
Well, folks, that is going to do it for me on this National Day of the Cowboy. So, happy celebrations. I'm not sure what it is you're supposed to do on these made-up holidays, but hey, have a good one anyways. Old Karma is, she is feeling defeated and tired, and she's just not real happy about life. But she'll get over it, or she won't. I don't really care. Anyhow, that's going to do it for me today. So thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing, sharing, all that good shit. Go find me on Apple, Apple Podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all the main ones. And if you're on any of those, go ahead and click subscribe or follow. Make sure you get every episode to your phone every day. Well, mostly every day, 5 days a week, at least. And if you're on iTunes, go ahead and give me a rating. Same thing with Google. I don't know if they do that on Spotify or not, but if you see somewhere where you can give me a review or a rating, please do. And please give it a 5 if you think it's worthy. If not, well, give it a 5 anyways. Help a brother out. And go find me on Facebook. I'm Matt McKinley. MakerMac85 on Twitter and Instagram. Burning Daylight for the show page. Burning Daylight on Instagram. Burning Daylight 2 on Twitter. Just search Burning Daylight on YouTube and you'll find me. Got the video podcast up there minus the music. All my video stuff's not going to have any music just so I can put it on YouTube and not have to worry about it. And go to patreon.com/Burning Daylight. We'll have some bonus content behind a paywall up there here shortly. And last but not least, I'm on the Open Range app, Burning Daylight, and you can go find me there. I post all my stuff up there too. Still figuring that one out, but I'm on it. And make sure you go enter the raffle. Deadline's coming up here pretty quick on Wednesday. So $10 get you in, $50 get you 6 spots, and get a chance to win a rope from 310 Ranch Life, our friends over there, a pair of jeans from Miss Kelly Martin and branded denim, and then a ball cap from Josh Williams and Don't Be a Gunsel. So go get entered up, and I'll be drawing on the 31st, 6 p.m. Pacific. It'd be 9 p.m. For you East Coasters, 7 o'clock Central, and 6 o'clock, or no, it'd be 8 o'clock Central, 7 o'clock in the Great Mountain Standard Time, and 6 o'clock out here on the left coast. So anyway, go get entered up, and hopefully you win. So good luck. Other than that, thanks for everything you guys do. Helps keep me going on this little ordeal, and I sure appreciate everything. So I'm gonna unsaddle and call her a day. So move your ass. We're burning daylight.